What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Jobbers and Goons. This is another episode of the Dr. Goons podcast, or the Jobbers and Goons podcast. And today, with me, I have a special guest. He's actually a fellow content creator, one of the premier tier list guys on YouTube, specifically in the fiction genre. My boy, Weeaboo Warrior, if you want to say what's up.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Weeaboo Warrior here. And yeah, like you said, I like to make tier list videos. It all started with my Star Wars tier list, actually, which blew up to over 1 million views. So that made me go into the tier list direction. And they definitely do better out of all my videos. So that's what I'd like. And I like to make them. They're pretty fun, but they take a lot of work. So today, I think we're going to be talking about one of them. If Goons and Jobbers wants to talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing today.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I actually am recording this podcast episode just because I'm having a featured guest on who's another content creator. Make sure to subscribe to him after you watch this. And I want to just have a sit-down conversation with him. We're going to talk about two verses we both really love, and he's made content on. I've made content on Harry Potter and Star Wars. And I recently did a reaction video to one of his Star Wars ones, so we'll probably talk about that as well, and anything else on the topic. But yeah, we had some pre-made topics that we'll be discussing at some point, but we can go ahead if you want to talk about your video and stuff. We can talk about that.
Yeah, which one do you want to talk about first? Star Wars or Harry Potter? I'm fine with either.
So Harry Potter, I didn't have a chance to watch yet. I'd like to react to it again on stream. That's why I was kind of asking.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Your tier list, but I'll probably just do a separate stream on that. So we can talk about the Star Wars on this one, and after I react to the Harry Potter tier list, I'll make a.
And then we could do a video on that.
Yeah, we'll do another podcast episode.
That sounds good to me. Yeah, so we can go to the Star Wars one.
But I am letting fans know we're still going to talk about both verses today. It's just we'll specifically talk about his tier list in another podcast episode, which is fine. So, what do you have anything in particular about your video you want to talk about, or we could just talk about the video itself, like my reaction? What do you want to?
The Star Wars one.
Yeah.
Let's see. I guess I heard your take on the Palpatine versus Mace Windu one, which I think is definitely one of the likely options. Just like that, Palpatine could have won, and that he is stronger than Mace Windu, but that Mace legitimately disarmed him in the moment. Which
I would like to, because when I was reacting, it was a very. If you guys haven't watched his video on it, where he laid out the case for did Palpatine throw the fight with Mace? One of the big, if you're not big into Star Wars, I'm just letting you know, for those getting into it, it is one of the biggest controversial topics within the fandom, by far. But in my opinion, if it's two people talking about it that know the resources, it's a really fun discussion because there's a lot of conflicting evidence. With the evidence in mind, one thing I really loved about your video is that you touch on the different points, right? And just overall why you feel the way you do about Palpatine throwing the fight. I personally come from the school of if Mace had gone there, right? And Palpatine's just looking to cook him, he could have. He had the group stunned with Force Scream, but he wanted to prove a point. And this caused the other Jedi to obviously die first, then Mace engages. But obviously in that moment, logically, could have killed him. I also do agree with you, and I think it's kind of foolish to argue that Mace is the same level of Sidious and the Force power. That's dumb as shit. It's literally stated Vapad was able to reflect it back. Because he wasn't as strong. It had to make a loop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people like to use Vapad all the time, and because that basically, I think it originated from the Revenge of the Sith novel, which was apparently heavily reviewed by George Lucas. But the thing is, they ignore the part where it literally says when he used the lightning that Mace was being overpowered and he was literally about to like get killed, and then it stopped. And we all know Palpatine stopped on purpose to trick Anakin. So literally by the novel itself, if Palpatine just kept shooting lightning, Mace would have been killed. So it would have just been Mace used the pod, which directly countered Palpatine to catch him. Like basically, he beat a hindered Palpatine because like Palpatine was scared of slipping, so he beat him there. And then after that, Palpatine could have just killed him with his lightning if he wanted to. If we go by the novel's portrayal of the fight,
I actually like the novel's portrayal. I actually think that novel's amazing. Stover did a great job. It is interesting you say that, because there is at one point in the video you're talking about, there's a lot of contention around Sidious's face, right? And
yeah,
the only thing I thought of on the spot was there's this interesting moment in Senate where Palpatine's explaining with his face, he's like, yeah, he basically is like, that bitch Mace Windu scarred my shit. Like, in the tone of how he said it, it seemed like a genuine, yeah, no, I actually got rocked. Like,
yeah, in the book it does make it sound like he got his face got distorted. But,
yeah, and while
I said,
go ahead.
I was gonna say in my video, I was saying like there are two options. The one that was his real face, but two that he was deformed by the dark side. But I don't think he was like scarred, like as in lightning scarred. Like his face was literally melting. It was more like his face was just deforming through dark side, so he wasn't actually being killed. He was just like basically getting uglier, and we know this because his hands were also getting deformed. Like he literally had like long evil fingernails afterwards, and like his whole body was a different color, not just his face. But so yeah, he could have been like scarred by the definition of like he's disfigured, but like I don't think he was literally being killed, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, 100%. I actually fully agree with that. And I'm glad you brought that up, because, and by the way, it's funny, I'm realizing like in the middle of talking about this that I definitely prefer this version of podcasting. Like, this conversation is great. And with that in mind, make sure everyone that's watching this, probably tomorrow after we record this tonight, make sure to smash the like button. And if you don't subscribe to both of us, you're a terrible person, objectively. But getting back to this,
do it.
The Mace Windu Sidious shit is interesting because when talking about the face part, two truths can occur in that moment, right? There's the whole, oh, he just destroyed the mask, and it revealed the Force degradation. If you guys don't know, if you like aren't deep into Star Wars, dark side users typically are heavily afflicted by dark side degradation, which is essentially their body breaking down and showing signs of aging and fatigue from the darkness basically rotting them. And a lot of people would say that was a moment in which the mask was destroyed, right? Well, the mask can be destroyed, and in the process of that destruction, his face can be fucked up too. Those two things can be occurring at the same time.
Yeah, he could have maybe like been hiding partially of what it was messed up, but he got more messed up in the process, basically.
Yeah, like if someone hits you hard enough to break the mask, and then, you know, it shatters and cuts your face up, and then the stuff that broke through it just straight up hits your face. All that I think is a reasonable situation there. I do think, and it's funny, I actually want to credit your video because it kind of gave me this new way of looking at that situation. Not necessarily that my whole opinion has changed on it, but just like a different avenue you could approach it. And that Sidious did lose. You could say, like, Sidious did lose. He got cocky, and when that one moment presented itself through Shatterpoint, Mace just caught him, right? You could say that. But you could also say that Sidious had planned for that, right? Like, okay, let's say I get caught. And before people fucking freak out, I'm going to explain this. But he's like, okay, if I do get caught, let's say I get disarmed or some shit, I know what to do at that point. I have a plan for that. And a couple ways this could be true, right? And having that confidence could outright just be a testament to his force power, right? He's like, I don't really need these fucking lightsabers. I'm kind of playing around when I have the lightsabers out. I'm trying to be disrespectful. It's known that Sidious does not like lightsabers. He thinks they're kind of arcane. And I totally get why. Like, if you could blow up a Death Star with your hand, why would you carry around a sword? You know? Like, you could do a lot more. But this moment with Mace, like, he loses the duel, and the reason I say that's entirely possible, that he felt like this could occur, is because when he was confronted by Yoda, he openly admits he could lose to Yoda.
Yeah.
So, he had conceded that he could very well have lost to Yoda. This is relevant because Mace Windu is oft compared to Yoda in particular in duels. So, this is entirely reasonable to guess that Sidious had potentially seen a possible L to Mace coming and how he would respond.
Yep. Yeah, he thinks. I think he seems definitely more afraid of Yoda. Like, just going off the movies. Like, he literally tried to run from Yoda right at the start.
Yeah. Well, and people really underestimate that moment. Like, when he walked in, those guards, they were literally supposed to be trained to essentially be like Vader type tiers. Like, so just entirely capable of protecting the Emperor from pretty much all heavy hitters. But Yoda walked in and finger flicked him.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue that they're supposed to be on the same level as like the Praetorian Guards from like episode 8 or whatever that could actually give Kylo and Rey a run for their money. And I know that the ones from episode 9, Palpatine's guards, like a guide like just outright says they're actually better than the ones Snoke's guards. But I don't know if you could scale the episode 3 ones.
And then you look at the history with post Revenge of the Sith. Those guards for the Emperor had to survive a death match with Vader. Alright, sorry about that, guys. We experienced some technical difficulties. But returning to talking about the guards, the fact that Yoda kind of melted these guards that should be relative to normal, at least high Jedi Knights to low Jedi Masters, that was obviously something that should and did worry Sidious. So, understandable. But I do overall think there are some ways that Sidious threw the fight, and I do think you made a compelling case in your video. But I also think we kind of got to ask ourselves, you know, someone willingly subjects themselves to something dumb, like, can you say they were holding back, so to speak? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, if he made a genuine mistake, as is kind of implied in the dueling with the Shatterpoint stuff, that's just him having a slight error there. But like I said, your video kind of helped me realize, like, it's likely he didn't, like, he wasn't worried about that happening, like getting disarmed.
Yeah. And I think we do have to say there is a distinction between like the Legends arguments and the canon arguments.
Yes.
I think Windu actually does have like legitimate feats in Legends. I'm not a Legends expert. I would say you probably are, but I don't know exactly how much you know. But I think Windu has some pretty good feats in Legends. But as far as I know in canon, which is pretty much I know most of things in canon, at least in the main timeline, and Windu's feats are kind of like just garbage. Like, he's consistently not good. And it's like, I have no problem with him like being Palpatine and Yoda level if they just present him like that, but he just has so many anti-feats, if you remember from my video, basically, and those are like all his fights. Like, I didn't like leave out his good ones. He just is not, he doesn't have anything good besides beating Palpatine.
Yeah, I mean, and Legends, he has a lot better shit. And Legends, like, his battle with Cal Vastor, super impressive feats relating to that. His stuff is more so showcased through lore of what he's achieved at the temple dueling other Jedi, stuff like that. Obviously, he does have some Clone Wars stuff, but Mace, I mean, there was kind of like Dooku saying, like, yeah, you probably, there is a chance you could kill me if we were to have a.
Yeah, you're talking about that Star Wars Adventures comic?
Yeah.
Or you're talking about Legend?
But then he goes on to, and then people are like, oh, well, there was a couple droids that popped. It's like, bro, hey, it's Mace Windu. Like, I don't think a couple droids would change everything for him. But Dooku just kind of threw him off the cliff. Like, maybe we'll fight some other day. Fuck off.
Yeah.
And that was it. So, I get it. I do think Mace would. I think he scales dueling wise close enough, if not to and above Sidious, for it to be reasonable that he did just catch Sidious on the dueling aspect.
Because if he is Dooku level, Dooku was able to like match Yoda for a time. So even if you want to say he would only win 1 out of 10 times, we could have just saw like the 1 out of 10 times. Like he's close enough to where it's possible. I could give him that.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of it, and I kind of touched on this aspect of my opinion in the video. I personally think that there's potential to be had for the conceit of Sidious just outright playing in there as well, because Sidious, like, we know Sidious found dueling to be beneath him, but he just did it to kind of stun on the Jedi, for lack of a better term. And I don't have a problem with this. I'm just saying that could potentially be why the situation played out the way it did.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've seen Sidious before. Like, his conceit cost him. I mean, he's kind of famous for it.
Yeah. Let's see. How about, what do you think about Anakin, Revenge of the Sith versus Mace Windu? That's an interesting topic, I think.
Oh, fuck. You're just going to ask, like, an absolute nuclear topic. That's fair. I want to start by saying I used to think it was a stall. I used to think that if Mace decides, you know what, fuck Anakin, I used to think he'd just run down on him. Now, I do think it was a lot closer than I used to estimate. But I would still favor Windu.
Yeah, Anakin's weird. He has like a lot of statements, like saying he's like, at least I think recently in canon, maybe some legend ones too, but like that, like saying he's like the strongest Jedi and like and stuff like that during Revenge of the Sith. And I think it might say it in the Revenge of the Sith novel at least like after he goes like Nightfall or whatever like that. But on the other hand, I think the movie, which I hold like in the highest regard, makes it pretty clear to me that Yoda and Sidious are still above him, because Yoda literally says Sidious is too powerful for Obi-Wan to go after, but Anakin isn't. And then Sidious says Anakin or Vader will surpass them, which is future tense, which implies he hasn't yet. So that's just my take on it. Like, people try to use like outside sources, book sources. I think the movie comes first to me. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, the way I try to, obviously, I love Legends more than just straight canon, but when talking canon, the way we're basically told in the books is like, they're canon up to the point it just flat out contradicts. When it flat out contradicts the movie takes precedence. So yes, obviously, the movie would be held in the highest regard if we're talking with canon in the mix. With canon in the mix, I agree with you. I think it was kind of portrayed that he's gonna get there. Sidious outright says it, but at the same time, and I hate when people are like, oh, well, Anakin was stated by Sidious to be like Lord Vader and above all that. It's like, cool. But Yoda watched the game film of this Lord Vader. He watched him melt Sendralig and his apprentices and said, yeah, no, that's way less dangerous than Sidious. I'll go. He was like, oh wait,
Yeah.
no, you said he killed Windu? Yeah, no, fuck that. I'll go take it.
Yeah, and that was supposed to be Anakin at his strongest, I think, because
that's Nightfall Vader.
Yeah, and like I think people say he's like mentally nerfed on Mustafar. I don't know if you agree with that or not. I know there's like statements saying he was fighting sloppy because he was arrogant, but there's some people who like argue that his confliction actually just made him weaker. I don't know if there's anything that
I think weaker is the incorrect way to argue it. All sources, including I guess what some we would call legend, state that Anakin basically had him in every regard. Essentially on that duel, and I mean it kind of does reflect this in the choreography of that battle. Like Kenobi was holding him off a majority of that fight. There's a moment or two where he does get a moment of advantage, but it's like quickly wiped away. And he eventually, and it literally says like in guidebooks and stuff that it's pretty much stated Anakin had every advantage except in tactics. And Obi-Wan had pretty much seen everything Anakin has. But obviously, Anakin hadn't seen everything Obi-Wan had, because he didn't know Obi-Wan knew that secret evil technique to kebab his shit when he made the leap. I don't know if you agree with that, but...
Yeah, the way I saw the fight is just Anakin was just taking control of the fight, overpowering Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan was just biding his time until Anakin would slip up, and Anakin did slip up because of his arrogance.
Yeah, and me personally, I felt like if anything, you can maybe argue that he was hindered by like the way he was trying to beat Obi-Wan. Like he was just kind of trying to bully him instead of going through the Force, being like real smart in how he was attacking Kenobi. He's just kind of raging through.
Yeah, I think a lot of this stems from how easily Dooku beat Obi-Wan at the beginning, and then Anakin easily beat Dooku pretty much, and then Obi-Wan did way better against Anakin. But I think it's partly because, well, Dooku just like took Obi-Wan out with the Force right there, and Dooku to be really good at taking people out with the Force. I don't know if you could argue Anakin would do it in the same way, but also Kenobi just knew Anakin's style. He was familiar with him, and you could argue Kenobi just got stronger throughout the film. I don't know how much time actually passed. I don't think it was that much, but
well, Styles also it does state in the novels that like Kenobi reached kind of like a new height when he basically like went oneness against. He had this weird like semi-oneness in the novel versus Grievous, where he was just floating on that motherfucker and like just boxed him up. And it's kind of implied, like, you know, he kind of realized at that point, like, whoa, I'm kind of saucy. But that kind of makes sense because he asked Yoda, he's like, yeah, you want me to go take care of that Emperor? And he goes, what? Like, yeah, chill. Like, you don't kill him.
Doesn't at least in Legends, don't they kind of imply that like Kenobi was like would just be better at everyone else than at dealing with Grievous, and like other people might not even be able to do it. Like he would even be better than Yoda or Mace against Grievous or something like that.
So that argument stems from the comments Mace makes in the novel to Kenobi, where Kenobi's like, yo, like, why don't you go take care of Grievous? And he's like, well, you know, your style's based on lightsaber defense and you perfected it. Like, you're fighting the ultimate offensive guy. So you were built to deal with him even better than someone like me, even though guess you could argue I'm technically above you stylistically, and this points to what I was going to bring up. Styles make fights in Star Wars. That actually does matter. Like, Dooku versus Kenobi, even though they're technically supposed to be on par with just their feats against other people and shit, actually I disagree. Dooku's the shit. Dooku, well, still, obviously Kenobi beats Anakin.
I do agree Dooku's above Kenobi in general. But I think Kenobi's close enough to Dooku where his style advantage just allowed him to do better against Anakin. Some people just think Kenobi's way below Dooku, and then that hindered Anakin is just also like below Dooku, which I don't think that's supposed to be the case. I think if you watch the movie, it's just logically the Vader at the end.
Yeah, that's why I was saying Dooku. Styles like matter, because Kenobi's style and the way he perfected Surisu is he focuses a majority of the force into the blade. His ultimate defense, right? Like just perfect, beautiful blade defense with the force enhancing it. And this Dooku is 100% aware of. He's like, oh, you're like diverting. You're not good with force walls. Okay, I'm not gonna just fucking sit here and try to figure out if I can probe my way through Surisu. Go away, and just folded him. Yeah, I do agree with you that there's almost no one. I mean, like we literally see Dooku match Yoda and just spamming force attacks.
Yeah, one interesting thing in the final duel is Kenobi does match Anakin in a force push blast. But the thing is with Anakin, he is more powerful in the force than Dooku, but we never actually see him like apply it offensively as well as Dooku. Like one Clone Wars episode comes to mind is like Anakin is I think it's in season 4. Anakin's just beating Dooku back and like Saber's like physically overpowering him, similar to like in Revenge of the Sith. But then Dooku basically keeps winning by like force blasting him with lightning or TKing him, and it's weird because I feel like Anakin should be stronger with force attacks than Dooku, but Dooku's force attack feats are just consistently better than his.
Yeah, Dooku's just like a connoisseur of just spamming at the right time, force moves, the right power. He's so well versed on the different abilities through the force. I mean, like Legends, the stuff he's able to do is crazy, and I love it personally. I mean, it's one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, but it just circles back to Styles making fights. The way he's able to use the force the way he does, he knew Kenobi's main primary focus of defense is through the blade with the force even, and left them susceptible. But Anakin doesn't really think like that. Anakin's just like trying to sauce on you. And if he's got to use the force, he's gonna like blunt force it.
Yeah, another example of style making fights is in the Clone Wars. Like Dooku is getting smacked around by Savage. So like in my opinion, like Savage like saber wise would be like a bad counter to Dooku just with the raw strength. But then like you can't like saying Savage would beat Revenge of the Sith Kenobi seems silly to me. Like I think Kenobi's style of just defense would just completely slice apart Savage. But
yeah, the only time, like, to be fair, pretty much every time Savage tried something, Dooku just fucked him up. The one time he was like fighting someone else and then Savage came in, it was like, okay. But then at the same time, Savage also bullied back, like just pushed around Kenobi and Anakin at the same time.
Yeah. I think they did a little better than Dooku in that regard. He like got flung, but also there's like some characters like Maul was able to easily deal with his strength, and so did Sidious. But someone like Maul, who I think is inferior to Dooku, was able to handle Savage's strength better than Dooku because Maul's actually really physically strong.
Yeah, but he also like Maul when he handled Savage just like randomly was like, oh, and tried to dash in. Whereas Dooku, the time I remember, he was like... Well, was this when he was occupied with Ahsoka? Not Ahsoka, I'm sorry. Asajj?
Yes. But every time he tried to block Savage's strikes, he would like flung back. One time he was disarmed, and another time he was like flung back. Though you could argue Savage was just stronger there because he was like more angry.
Yeah, and I think in like... Dooku was already dealing with Asajj. Like briefly, even though he was joking around, like briefly survived Sidious. Like dueling around with him.
Yeah.
I mean, there is that, I don't know how much stock you put into it, but I think it's pretty cool. There is that statement within one of the guidebooks that Savage outright had more potential and power in the Force than Maul. Don't know. I personally, you know what though? I don't know if you've ever watched other Star Wars content creators, but like, I feel like. Yo, so we actually, for whatever reason, the OBS just did not record the last hour plus of this. This was an amazing episode featuring Weeaboo Warrior, and it's actually inspired me to want to go ahead and essentially create a podcast with a roundtable of other YouTubers, in which will be introduced this week. I'm going to shift the podcast format to that. Not sure what we're going to call it, but that'll be the big podcast where I bring people like Weeaboo Warrior on, Zero from Kato. Like, it's going to be an amazing podcast. So I'm super excited for that. But yeah, if you guys want to see me and Weeaboo run it back, because we really got in depth on Star Wars and Harry Potter shit, let me know. I'll possibly bring them on today, because I'm really disappointed the audio corrupted. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Smash the like button. Go check his channel